Please put your hands together for Bradley Glassel. Hey, happy Thursday. Thank you for joining us once again here on the Madison Story Slam YouTube channel for another great story. This time we're going to hear from Bradley Glassel.
Oh, I did have one superpower. I had a cloaking ability to be totally invisible to girls. So that was my superpower.
You know, at the beginning of this, I talk about how, I don't remember if it's kept in the video or not, we'll see, but I talk about how Bradley is the reason that Story Slam still happens. Bradley is, I met him through Story Slam. Doing these storytelling events, I tend to meet a lot of people, and people, come back and they become regulars and they become dear friends. And I count Bradley among those friends. But as I was announcing him, I kind of poked fun at him and said, Brad has signed up the last 5 times and at the last minute backed out on telling a story and didn't even show up to Story Slam. And that's why he gets up at the beginning and says that's an inaccurate statement. I also shared with the audience that the reason that he is the reason that Story Slam keeps going or is still going is because a couple years ago I was just kind of burnt out. You feel those burnt out feelings and put a lot of work into something, and sometimes you might get a little resentful that things don't go the way you want, or there's no payoff, as far as creatively, emotionally, spiritually. And so I was really considering stopping Story Slam, just ending it. And I got a message from Brad about how his first time at Story Slam, he had just been diagnosed with cancer, and doing something like Story Slam was something that he was crossing off a bucket list. So his very first time, he got up and told a story. And so he just sent me this message that just said, what you do is really important. It helped me through my cancer diagnosis and at that time, and now he's, in remission. And, so it just really touched me. It was, it's things like that when people reach out and say, hey, what you're doing is important. The fact that you're bringing people together and building community with them, it's really awesome and blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to puff up my own chest here, but when I hear that from people, it's really what, keeps me going. And so that was the closest I've ever come to ending Story Slam. And, it's because of Bradley that it's still going. Brad is telling a story about getting in a fight. He talks about a superpower that he has, and but mostly it's a story about a fight, and it's that classic kind of like 1950s, like a movie set in the 50s where somebody's like, "Hey, meet me out back by the alley." So it's a great story. Brad's a funny guy, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, here's Brad.
The lesson is do it for Brad. This is, by the way, I just got to say that's a gross exaggeration of 5 times texting and canceling. It was one time, and it was the Brewers' final. The Brewers are in the 7th game of their series, and I'm from Milwaukee, so I couldn't not watch that. So it's a gross exaggeration. Horrible. He's a horrible person. All right. So who here has seen the movie A Christmas Story? Okay. All right. So you remember in the Christmas Story where Ralphie is bullied by these kids, and he finally has had it and beats up the one bully in this fury of, Tourette's, yelling and screaming and beating him up, and his mom finally pulls off. So keep that in mind. In this story. So, as I mentioned, I grew up in Milwaukee, and I went to Catholic grade school and high school. So, and we're talking back when, you're full nuns with full garb, heads and all this, and rulers on your knuckles and all that kind of stuff. So when I went to high school, again, it's a small Catholic high school. We had about 80 people in our graduating class, and in a real working class neighborhood. 6th and Mitchell, if anybody's familiar with Milwaukee. Notre Dame High School on 6th and Mitchell. And so I go to high school, and again, this small working class school, and like just about every high school, every school out there, you start getting this pecking order, these cliques and all this kind of stuff. And we would eat in the lunchroom there, which was the old auditorium, and they had long tables put together, 8-foot tables put together. And over a series of time, the pecking order would be established. And at one end of the table would be the tough guys, the cool guys, and all that. And then in ranking, it would depreciate down the line to what your pecking order was in that. I was pretty solid middle on that. I was not a tough guy. I'd actually never even been in a fight in my life. Was not a tough guy. Was not great at sports and all that. But I also wasn't smart enough to be a geek. So, so I was in the middle, and that was kind of my rank in high school overall. Oh, I did have one superpower. I had a cloaking ability to be totally invisible to girls. So that was my superpower. But so we had this kind of pecking order there, and I didn't really care about it that much. Well, one day we're sitting at the lunch table, it was a Monday, and this guy gets up, and he looks at me, points at me, and he says, "Glassel, I'm going to kick your ass. I want you to meet me behind Greeby's Friday after school, and I'm going to kick your ass." And I'm like, what? What, and this is a guy I actually went to grade school with. I didn't have any argument with him and all this, but I think this was his way to move up in the pecking order. So I'm like, oh my God, I'd never been in a fight. I don't know what to do. This guy's going to beat the heck out of me, So all week long, I'm worried about this whole thing of what's going to happen here. I'm going to get beat up, and I'm building up this tension, and I'm building up, everything in my mind of what's going to go on. I told some friends, hey, when he's beating me up, can you pull him off of me so, he doesn't kill me and stuff, and, had all these things and all that. So again, we're talking 6th and Mitchell in Milwaukee, Greeby's Bakery, classic old bakery. There's an alley behind there. And so comes Friday afternoon, we go back there. Well, by then, the whole school knows about this. So we're talking a big crowd comes, big crowd, and here's me and this guy standing there. And there's all these people around, which is just heightening the whole thing. And at that point, now think of Ralphie. And that's what happened to me. I just broke. I went into, yelling every swear word in the world, and the Tasmanian devil going at him and punching, and he's like, oh my God, he backs up. He didn't throw a punch. He's like, oh my God, didn't know what to do. And about 2 minutes later, here comes a cop, comes down the alleyway and breaks it all up. So basically, I won the only fight of my life. Never been in one since, and never before. So it comes Monday, and we come to lunch and go to the lunch table, and all the alpha guys come up and say, hey, Glassel, you're up at the table over here. And I look at him and I said, nah, I'm okay where I am. And I think actually that was probably one of the proudest times of my life. So, thank you.